first things first, I think the word experiment, it's one of my new favorite words. So I love that you brought that up. A friend of mine who just got her PhD and focuses on leadership. We had a long coffee chat last week, and it was all about using the word and using the framework of experiments in corporate culture. Because often when you say, "Oh, we're just going to try and fail," failure still has a hook for so many people, and it's like, "Oh yeah, I love the concept, but not for me." But experiment gives you so much permission. It creates space of, even by calling it an experiment, I'm going to experiment with asking a question in a meeting that I wouldn't normally ask.
Welcome to Play It by Your Rules, the podcast for those tired of living by somebody else's script and ready to live and lead on their terms. I'm your host, Maggie Rombach, coach, speaker, and strategist. I'm here to spark a little rebel energy and leave you with a sense of possibility. Each episode, I'll talk to leaders, adventurers, experts, and changemakers who found their way. Some loud and bold, others quiet and intentional. You'll walk away with fresh insights, inspiration, and practical tools to chart your next chapter. If you're craving more freedom, flow, and fun, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Play It by Your Rules, the podcast about mindful rebellion against the old script. A call to find your voice, design a career and life that fits who you are now without burning everything down that you've built. And today, another amazing guest, Tyler, will be talking about curiosity. I'm very curious where that will lead us. So without further ado, I'll give you the word right away. Who are you? What mission are you on?
Oh, what a fabulous question. My name is Tyler Chisholm. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Clear Motive Marketing, which is a national marketing agency based here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And on the last 5 years, I've taken up the mantle, I've lit the torch, and I've flown the flag that curiosity is the most valuable leadership trait for any leader at any stage of their journey, because it's not an arrival, it is not a yes or no, it is a daily practice that I believe opens endless possibility with yourself, first and foremost, but more importantly, with the team and the people around you.
I love it. And I'm a naturally curious person. So I have the number one leadership skill I need these days. I like the sound of it. So before we go deeper into curiosity, I'm sure you heard about the 4C, like the 21st century critical skills, because curiosity is one of them. It's critical thinking, curiosity, collaboration, something else I don't come up with yet. So out of those, why do you think curiosity wins in your view?
I think it's the most versatile, but I believe that it doesn't work without the other two. And then I don't know the 4Cs. What would be the fourth one? I'm resisting Googling it on my other screen while I'm talking to you.
I'm doing that right now.
Okay, good. Okay. If you got us covered, then we're good. Curiosity, what I love about it is they can be as transactional as childlike curiosity. Curiosity in just the world around you. And, oh, that's interesting, I want to learn more. Moving up to the next level of self-curiosity, which is really getting in deep on understanding with a critical thinking lens and a collaborative approach. Where am I showing up? Where am I getting in my own way? Where am I helping? Where am I hindering? But from there, it moves to my second tier, which I believe this is a ladder. It all starts and all is built on a framework of self-curiosity. And as a leader, especially as we evolve on our journey, I don't want to say the words get older, but as we practice something for longer, it behooves us to go, maybe I'm carrying in some set of beliefs or some set of limitations that's holding me back in this environment, because maybe 5 years ago, me, that worked, but today, me, that doesn't work. The second you start getting curious about that in a collaborative way, not a critical way, but really get objective of where you might be blowing up or holding back the world around you or helping it. The second level is relational curiosity, because I don't believe it's not good enough just to be curious about yourself. And I don't believe that being curious with people around you just to get things to happen, building those key relationships when it matters, so that when the pressure's on, the deadlines are there and the tension is real, you've got enough connection with that other human being to be able to explore hey, I'm curious, what's actually going on here, versus you missed this deadline or you did this wrong. And it becomes very accusational without any curiosity. And then the ultimate pinnacle of the pyramid is strategic curiosity, because in the world that we live in, the pace, the onslaught of technology. You and I have even talked already today about, oh, what's the latest AI that's helping me hack my life? If I'm not able to look at everything around me, from my own interactions to my company to the markets that I live in a very curious, open-minded way, you're going to get blindsided because things are changing faster than I think any one leader or even any one team can keep a handle on.
So that's a good pitch on curiosity. Let's see if I listened properly. So self-curiosity, relationship, and strategic.
Yes.
I would think there's also probably something in the middle there that is also about the substance. You know, there's something about me, about you or us, but then also about being curious about what's happening, right? It's maybe part of strategic, but you know what I mean? It's also.
Yes, I would say it's almost the underpinning for all of it because it's the indicator that you need to look. Hey, something's
Mm.
going on here. Is it me? Is it you? Is it us? Is it the world outside? Is it all of those things? I really liked what you just said, but I think that's the thread that pulls through all three, actually.
Okay. And that gets me back to the four 21st century skills, because actually it's not even curiosity, is not even one of them. It's critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And I do remember I wrote a post on
Activity.
that a year ago, and my argument was already then, and I'm sure you would agree with that, that curiosity is actually the glue that holds them all together.
Yes, 100%. Because curiosity without critical thinking can just be spinning. Collaboration without actual curiosity about the other person and the situation you're in can feel very hollow and transactional. And creativity and curiosity, I think, are born to go together. And I'm going to add another one in. I think courage is actually quite
Oh,
important and
I
very
love
much
that.
required because in a corporate environment, in a corporate setting, and of course, curiosity, I believe, permeates all aspects of life. But for the sake of my own work and my own experience, I narrowed it into quote unquote the workplace. It can take a lot of courage sometimes to be curious, i.e., speak up, i.e.,
Mm.
ask the quote unquote silly question. And if you don't create an environment where there is a high degree of psychological safety, then you're relying almost solely on the individual's courage. And that can be pretty tricky. It's risky to say you don't know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's true. I mean, speaking up takes a lot of courage. And if you come at it with curiosity, it helps. Also, what I noticed, what helps, if you detach from how it lands, you know, if you don't make it about how clever or stupid you look, you know, if it's more about, I throw something out there, I just, you know, it's kind of like a menu of ideas that you offer in a restaurant, and then people pick whatever they pick, but you don't get attached to it. And that probably helps to speak up more, because you're less worried if people think you're smart or stupid, depending on what you said.
I think that I like the waiter idea. If you're a waiter or server and you get disappointed every time someone orders something that you didn't think they should order, that would be a really tough job.
That's true.
Oh, they didn't order the fish. Oh no. Oh no. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think sometimes how you set it up of saying, hey, I'm going to throw something out there that might be a little bit surprising or might be a little bit of left field, but let's just see how it lands. Sometimes I think softeners, creating space, using language, I think can be very important versus just saying something and owning it versus like, I'm going to be devil's advocate for a minute. Let me say this. And I think that really creates a lot of permission and it sometimes wedges open a little bit of space when there isn't any in a room, especially with deadlines, corporate. You've got a hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, who's prophesizing with the room. And now you want to say something that slightly deflects. I do believe that using softeners and how you put it into the room can also free you from from what happens next. I put this out on the table. It is not my idea. It is a idea. Let's talk about it. And maybe we throw it away. Maybe we love it. I don't know. It takes a lot of, I think, self-awareness to do that in a way that you don't get connected to what you said.
I like that, to have a softener. And then you also have to create a culture of curiosity, because if everybody is curious rather than judgmental, you know, if you throw an idea out there, people go like, oh, that's interesting, tell me more. You know, I think it really can be a
100%.
positive, you know, environment.
Well,
Now,
one pulls and the other shuts down. Like exactly what you did there. When you go, tell me more. I physically wanted to lean into the screen because you actually pulled it in from me versus like, ah, really? That's a stupid idea. I pull away from the screen.
yeah, yeah, language matters so much.
It does.
I wanted to pick on something else up that you said before about the you of 5 years ago and the self curiosity, because that's very much in line with what I'm exploring and encouraging people to reflect more about. You know, I noticed in our careers every 10 years or so, our priorities and our goals change, and sometimes we are stuck in the me of 5 years ago, and maybe I achieved everything I dreamt about 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but actually my dreams changed and I haven't even
Yes.
realized. So can you say a bit more about this whole idea of self-curiosity or how you see that happening concretely?
Yes, I can. Absolutely. I love what you said about sometimes you catch up to your goals and you don't even realize it when all of a sudden you look around and go, oh, these are all the things I wrote down 5 years ago, and here I am. About 6 to 7 years ago for me, I did a leadership 360 with my team. And I received some feedback that was very clear and impossible to ignore that I took up too much space. I didn't allow people to show up in the room. I asked questions I already knew the answer to. I shut down meetings by being really enthusiastic, but also filling the room with my hippo energy. But at the same time, I had actually started a podcast.
Mm.
And I had this amazing opportunity to go, that version of me as a podcast host would be terrible. Never leaving the guest time to speak, always trying to be smarter than the guest, always trying to show how much I knew. And I started to really play with the idea of like, well, what if podcast personality Tyler showed up as leadership Tyler? And that's where the self curiosity. And I had recently, at that time, thinking about the whole journey, I had read Carol Dweck and her book on growth versus fixed mindset. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, wow, CEO Tyler has a fixed mindset. This is who we are. This is what's going to happen. I need to have all the answers. But podcast Tyler had a growth mindset. Oh, what is the guest going to teach me today that I don't know coming in? I'm never going to be the hero because Maggie's an expert on her world. Why would I ever pretend? And I actually took a sheet of paper and I put it on my desk and I drew a line down and I wrote fixed on one side and I wrote growth on the other. And that was back in the days of COVID. So I was online all day long, probably similar to my world today, but 6, 7 meetings a day. After every meeting, I would write little comments in each category of which version of Tyler showed up. And very quickly, I realized that when fixed mindset, Tyler showed up, the meeting was less productive. The team was less engaged. I might have felt good at the end, but if I was really honest, I'm like, I don't know if we solved anything or everyone just nodded and agreed with what I had already brought in. But when I had growth Tyler show up, growth mindset Tyler, all of a sudden there was space. There was new ideas coming from the team. I actually felt better about the meeting because it actually tied to the higher, more strategic goals versus just my own ego. I'm saying ego pretty loosely, but trying to take over. And as I started to analyze that, that little bit of self-awareness, that self-curiosity of just taking a note that took moments, I realized that the self that I was actually holding me back as a leader and was going to stop me from reaching any of those goals that were 5 years away. And that was where it was a turning point for me. And that's where self-curiosity, without it, wouldn't have ever evolved into any of the book or even I've done 600 podcast episodes. Every one was a chance to practice being curious, which then allowed me to be a better leader.
I love that. And I'm thinking about when listeners now hear that, really practically, I would encourage anybody listening to just do that, to look at the different personas that you have show up in your life. And I also sense a bit of a sense like still some humor the way you talk about it. You have a way you talk about your CEO, I just always encourage people also to not take yourself too seriously. I think sometimes we are so serious about everything about work, about how we shop in work. But when we can detach from that a little bit, come with curiosity, but also, with a bit of lightness, we might suddenly see amazing things. And that was quite an amazing analytical approach you took. And what also came up is it's a tool I think it's from Coactive Coaching. It's called the Captain and the Crew, and it's a really powerful
Oh.
tool. So first you do a visualization and you find your captain. You're kind of like the person, the energy, whatever guides you. But then you build your crew, and your crew is basically the personas that you already have that already show up. So
Hmm.
you've been talking about the CEO you and the podcast you. For me at the time, it was a bit more conceptual. So it was the grade A student. Because I learned how to get the good grade, so that's what I did. But then also the playful me. So I had all these characters. And then when I worked on that with my coach, she suggested that I need a bit more male energy, not all the time because I'm a people person, I'm really collaborative, but like sometimes you need to be able to get into that energy. So I was just back from a Mongolia holiday. So we added Genghis Khan to that, this really, clever, um, ruthless warlord, but just this bit of energy. And I think that's a really practical tool to not be that person or that person, but to be aware of all those bits of you and to choose when you tap into which energy, because I'm sure the CEO, Tyler, is still important to come in sometimes, right?
100%. Because I always joke with curiosity. I joke. So, Maggie, what if you and I were going to go to a movie tonight at 8? And you wanted to go to one movie, I wanted to go to the other. If were unable to decide or pick which movie, we both miss the movie.
Or we
In
go to different
business,
movies.
we do that. We do that. But as a team, oftentimes we're stronger if we go together. So in a
Yes.
company, sooner or later, a decision has to be made. So curiosity is never about advocating leadership and saying, well, I'm not going to make a decision, but it's making sure you are getting all the perspectives. You're being inclusive on that journey. But sooner or later, a decision typically has to be made. Or else you and I both miss the movie, or we go separate movies. And we know as companies, if we all start going in separate directions, we often don't reach the bigger goal.
Absolutely. No, I like that's so true.
I really like your captain and crew metaphor. That's very powerful. I think that giving people permission to have multiple selves. I actually read a book years ago called The Symphony of Selves by James
Mm.
Fadiman. And it talks very openly about the celebration of you have a work you and a family you and a friend you and a sports you and a buddies you. And they actually went into it. I don't want to go too deep, but they said as the evolution of the single deity approach evolved in our society, where we went from multiple gods, the gods of nature and the gods of almost more the pagan side of things, and we went to one God, there was pressure as humanity to always be seeing themselves as one version of themselves. And his book and his whole thesis was that actually has held us back from being giving us the flexibility for the crew, which I love your metaphor, to show up. And he really broke it down from a historical perspective. But it was reading that, also reading the book on fixed versus growth mindset around the same time, and also being COVID, so a lot of time to think, that I really started to analyze the self curiosity of which one of my selves was helping in what setting and which one was hindering in other settings. So I love the captain and the crew. I'm going to do some research on that after we finish talking.
I think it's coactive, and I can also send you a link. I should find it
Please do.
quickly.
Please do.
It's a really cool
I
exercise.
love that for my team. And sometimes giving people a framework also gives them permission to go, oh, so it's not me. I'm not schizophrenic. There actually is multiple versions of me. I think giving permission sometimes is very powerful.
Yeah, and then I update my crew every so often because, as you said, the five
Yes.
years ago, you was like, oh no, you know what? You're out of my boat now. I need somebody else in my boat, and then you bring them on. So let's
That's so empowering.
yes, and it's also fun. Again, I think we need to bring some fun back. Life is serious enough, and let's
It is.
sprinkle in some lightness. So let's touch on the other two curiosities. So we talked about self curiosity. I think we touched a bit on relationship curiosity, but can you say a bit more how that plays out in leadership situations or, any example that comes up?
For me, relational curiosity is so critical, more so when things go poorly versus when things go well. If there's no stress in the room, you and I can have I don't like having tough conversations. Well, what makes it tough? It's usually a subject matter that I perceive as the person, as the leader, that I'm like, oh, I don't want to bring this up with Maggie. It's uncomfortable. I don't know. But if I've built that relationship with you, more importantly, what I really want to talk about is trust. I want to get curious enough to know what's going on in you. And I don't mean be your therapist. I don't mean ask you what you've done the weekend, but actually care enough to know what's going on with you, even just in the work setting. Like, Megan, you normally hit deadlines. I see you miss this deadline. What's going on? Give me the rest of the story versus why did you miss this deadline?
Hmm.
There's no relationship there, which means there's no trust. And if there's no trust, the whole pyramid falls apart. So I believe I've met a lot of leaders that came from very technical backgrounds, which means they were often elevated because of their accounting prowess or their engineering prowess. Oh, working people. Oh, that's the part of my job I hate. But then they get put into a leadership role and they don't have relationships. They don't have trust. They don't have connection with the people around them. And I believe in building that and building up that bank. So when things do get tense or deadlines and external pressures, that you've got a strong enough relational curiosity platform that you can deal with that individual as a human, but also as a co-team member. And together you have to get shit done. And I really think that it's not fluffy at all. I think it's very, very strategic and very deliberate. And when people know that you're in their corner because you've taken the time to connect with them on the things that really matter for them in their life, but more importantly, even in understanding what's going on with them in their role, when tough deadlines, it's part of my theory that I don't believe that most times it's actually a high performance team. I believe it's a bunch of people bolted together with an unrealistic deadline and severe consequences and called a work camp. That's what
The
that
work
is.
camp.
Yeah, it's not a high performance team. I have had the privilege of seeing some high performance teams from like fighter pilots to aerial demonstration groups flying with the military. The level of personal accountability, the level of willingness to admit and to step up and to know what's going on with your teammate so that in a life and death situation you can perform, that's high performance. Not giving a whole bunch of people that don't like each other an unrealistic deadline and forcing them to work 12 hours a day. That's a work camp. That's a work camp.
It's interesting you say that. So I used to work for the Red Cross, for the bit of the Red Cross that goes to conflict countries for almost
Ooh,
15 years.
wow.
And, so because in the field, when you're in a conflict country, it's a bit like military in the sense, you really,
Mm-hmm.
there's no space for argument. If the person in charge says this is dangerous, we got to move, you don't start discussing it, you just move. And it's
Mm-hmm.
highly effective in those situations.
Yes.
But then also, I would challenge you that that's really high performing. I think it's highly effective in those situations. But at least in that military example, and what I'm thinking of what I've seen in the field is that that doesn't give room to be curious, to challenge each other, and to build something bigger, because you just need to move quick, or to just tackle a very concrete challenge. See what I'm
And I
trying
think
to say?
I do. And I think that that's like the environment that I want to witness was a debriefing environment where a high performance team of aerial demonstration pilots for the Canadian military were debriefing. So it was after the mission. It wasn't in the air. It was on the ground. There is a period of time, and I completely agree with you. I get to work in marketing. So no one's going to die. It's marketing. It's not a conflict zone. It's not a fighter pilot. It's not an emergency hospital on the front lines of a conflict situation where this isn't everything needs to be a debate and everything needs to be this. But I bet there's a time afterwards that, hey, in this situation, let's debrief on how we could have done that better.
Mm.
And if you direct and you minimize people with orders all the time and don't include them, and I know the military is a slightly different thing, you will lose discretionary effort. You will risk a high degree of disengagement. But when I tell you to duck, I mean it.
Mm.
I don't want you to debate with me. But after the fact, hey, in this situation, like, understanding the context and creating space when it's appropriate, when you've got safety, when you've got environmental factors, when you have literally life and death situations, maybe there's not a time to be curious in that moment. But afterwards, I do think there's always time to allow people to connect and allow people to express themselves in terms of how they went through that situation. Because I've also known people in the military that were in complete command and control structures. They never processed their trauma. They never processed their stress. They never got to collaborate and talk about it after action. And then it got really anchored.
Yeah.
Some of them spun out the backside of the military. Military is a great example because I think that there's very clear use cases for direction and orders and commander's intent. And I do believe there's a lot of space for how did that actually make you feel after action report, after action, that sometimes gets lost. And I think it's been showcased more, but I think we're entering into another realm of this conversation if we go down this road. And I have a lot of friends in the military. I've never been in the military, so I'll always be very careful with what I prophesize about that.
Sure, let's not go into that rabbit hole too deeply.
But
I
but
did.
a very good. I'm very curious about your perspective. We'll talk about it offline.
So I did pick up, you're quite a book person. So you'll probably also like this. I have a new book I'm reading. It's called Fight Less, Win More. Have
Oh,
you
I
heard
have not
about
read
it?
that. No, I have not.
So I literally just started it because the reason I bring it up, it's about negotiations built on hostage negotiation approaches, but brought into business.
Mhm.
And in fact, it argues that good negotiation starts all with curiosity and listening. So I just thought,
Yes, it does.
it'll be a good.
I've read a handful of books. I've interviewed an ex SWAT team negotiator for Chicago SWAT, very active, very active jurisdiction. And it was amazing the amount of like have empathy, be tactical about it, be really. There's Chris Voss, who's made himself very popular over the last bunch of years as an ex FBI hostage negotiator. And you're right. So many of the qualities that
He
you
wrote the
might not
foreword of the
think.
book. So
Oh,
yeah,
did he?
Chris,
Okay,
I was
that
like, I
doesn't.
heard this name just now. Yes.
Yeah. And by really, it's about understanding the other person, but
Yeah.
being very deliberate and very strategic about it. And I think that strategic relational curiosity very much delves, but you also have to be pretty comfortable with who you are in that situation to not be triggered, not to react, not to have a very adverse reaction to this person across from you that you might deem vile based on what they've done in terms of being a negotiator from the terrorist perspective. but understanding their motivations and that they're also human, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think there's a lot of lessons. And let's be honest, it's popular for the average. I think it attracts us. We go, "Ooh, hostage negotiator." You think there's going to be some secret sauce, but a lot of it is about empathy and understanding the other person.
Absolutely. And nonviolent communication. I mean, it's a bit, it goes
Yes,
beyond that, but, just good communication.
100%.
Um, that's great. So let's touch a bit more on strategic curiosity. I'm curious what that is about.
The ability, I especially let's talk about it in a group setting. How do you elevate beyond the stories, the narratives, the objectives, the agendas that are with that each individual to go, wow, let's really look at this problem from all sides. If the problem is an elephant and we're all standing in front, we're only going to see the tusks and the eyes and the ears. But if you're standing in the back, you might see something completely different. And I think that what I've seen and what I've experienced oftentimes, and you've heard me make the joke about the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. I've been in so many rooms with clients where I'm the vendor. So although I have opportunity for input, I'm usually following the lead of the client. And I've seen so many times, especially with large multinational organizations, where the hippo comes in, no matter what the data was, no matter what the team had decided, the hippo prophesizes and kind of runs over everybody in the room, like what a hippo can do.
Love the
That's
image.
not very strategic. That is top down command and control style leadership. And I've seen it so many times. That person, before that person came in the room, there was often collaboration. There was often different perspectives. There was often, hey, what would it be like if we actually turned this around and thought about it completely from the opposite side? What if we imagined that the customer was this versus that? And that level of possibility language really creates a strategic level of understanding. And let's be honest, if you're strategic about the world around you, that also gives you a different, you come into the room with more, with you're more heavily armed with like, well, kind of, you think about what's going on in the world and how this group sees it this way. And that curiosity and that ability to hold multiple dimensions in your mind simultaneously, the pro and the con, the red team, green team, like, okay, you guys are going to shoot holes in this whole idea. I'm not going to take that personally because it was my idea. This is the value. Years ago in my agency, we loosely informally created a policy with, then when there's a group of people in the room, it wasn't who said the thing. They don't get to own that idea because the only reason they said it is because what I said or you said and how it bounced around and how we riffed off each other. That's true strategic elevation. Oh, Tyler, that was Tyler's idea, but Tyler only said it because Maggie said this. And as a group, I remember leaving a meeting and we're like, "Oh my God, that's such an amazing headline. Who came up with it?" And the answer was we did, not you or not me. That all of a sudden allowed the team to elevate because you didn't get to take credit for the idea, but you didn't get blamed for a bad idea because it was just, you were just putting stuff out on the table. So it kind of had twofold. When you give someone credit, then someone also then knows that they were the one who didn't get their idea chosen. So just by simply abandoning that, I noticed over time the team got more and more comfortable. They felt more safe to say the craziest things, to completely flip the idea, the campaign, the problem the client was trying to solve on its head because there was space in the room to be strategic. And it wasn't about, oh, what if I look bad? Oh, what if Joe thinks that I said something silly? Once that went away, the ideation improved.
So it could be a tool to help people speak up more and share their ideas
I think
because
so.
you
I would
take
say
it on. I
absolutely.
like that because the whole podcast is about speaking up more, setting your boundaries. But now I started to dig deeper and say, like, okay, we all agree on that, but how precisely do you actually do it? Okay, how do you do it? You open your mouth in a meeting, but it's not always that easy, right?
No,
So
it's
I
not.
like that. So that could be a concrete tool to say elevate it to a strategic level, make it a systemic, like a team thing, and
Yes.
then everybody contributes to the team outcome. So everybody can throw something in. I really like that. And I also think
You
if any of the listeners suspects that he or she might be a hippo themselves,
I
there might be
guarantee, I
time for some
guarantee you're
self
thinking about it. You're
curiosity.
thinking about it.
I know when you talked about your CEO you beforehand, I got that feedback very early in my career because I'm just really passionate and I just have tons of ideas. So I just have this need to spit them out. And I had that
Guilty,
very,
guilty.
very early in my career. It was a very lovely French lady, a very introvert person who very kindly and politely told me, Maggie, it's cool that you got all that energy, but you're not even aware that you're bulldozer and you're just rolling over us. And I'm like, oh.
I recently, about 2 weeks ago, was in a meeting with a new client and I'd done so much research and I was so well prepared. And one of my team after told me, said, Tyler, love your passion, but it was still about 15, you talked about 15% too much. And I was like, oh no, like that's the beauty of all this. Even when you know it and you believe in it and you write about it, you still get to practice it because our humanness shows up. And whatever that need is for me to go, but I have a great idea. I didn't let the client talk enough. And I got that feedback from my team, which I really value because him and I have very, very good, we have a solid trusting relationship. And he was right. I did talk 15% too much, maybe even 14, 16%.
That's the passion speaking. I can so
Yes,
relate.
it is. But it gets all over everybody sometimes.
It does, but
I
but
know.
look,
Because if you turn it down too much, there's a risk of you not being you. And I
yes,
think I love what you said about boundaries. This is who I am and this is what I value. But that still has to show up. Again, we're in a corporate environment. That's the criteria here. You can go through your own life and be as nutty as you want, but in a corporate environment, there is a belief that the team can do more than the individuals on themselves. So if that's the case, especially as a leader, a manager, and you can be a leader without title, you can be a leader in energy, you can be a leader in your role, creating that space and elevating the people so you bring the voices in that maybe sit on the sidelines, and those of us who jump in right away, you make space for them but don't allow them to bulldoze over the other people. Like there is a bit of refereeing under it without being like without a whistle, no whistle refereeing, but I think it's being a guide and creating a steward of that room of people or that group of individuals, no matter what your title is or not. I do believe in the long run you will end up further ahead than if you didn't do that.
absolutely. And so you mentioned that even if you got it, you still have to do it, right? Like this whole thing about
Yes.
doing things. Because that's a perfect leeway, because this podcast will come out the week when I'll be talking about courageous experiments. So that's a
Oh,
perfect
I
fit.
love it. Oh, courageous experiments. I
Because we
love
also talked
everything
about
about that.
courage before. So in this whole, everything we talked about until now, to be more courageous, to bring up more ideas, to be more curious, how could people use courageous experience or just experience, so to get more to the place where you do and where you don't just, so you did the self-reflection, the self-curiosity, so you're aware maybe that you're too passionate or you're too quiet or whatever. So what could be a courageous experiment in this context that could get people to this high performing team?
First things first, I think the word experiment, it's one of my new favorite words. So I love that you brought that up. A friend of mine who just got her PhD and focuses on leadership. We had a long coffee chat last week, and it was all about using the word and using the framework of experiments in corporate culture. Because often when you say, "Oh, we're just going to try and fail," failure still has a hook for so many people, and it's like, "Oh yeah, I love the concept, but not for me." But experiment gives you so much permission. It creates space of, even by calling it an experiment, I'm going to experiment with asking a question in a meeting that I wouldn't normally ask.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to do that with myself. I'm going to recruit somebody, an ally on my team, a trusted friend. We all have someone at work that's like, okay, I really want to run experiments, but I'm worried to do it with the group. Can I do it with you? No problem. And rare would someone say no. I think you can set up really safe. And even if you think about coaching, if you're working with an individual, don't start with the thing that's a 9 out of 10 on the stress level. Start with something that's a 2 out of 10. Start with something that feels safe and feels less risky, because in my belief, everything's a muscle and everything takes practice. And if it's a 9 out of 10, I might not do it, but a 2 out of 10, I can do it. Like, it's like, that's what I loved about the podcast. Cause every time I got on the show, I got to practice being curious and I got better at it. I listened to my early episodes and my later episodes. I'm like, oh, later episode, Tyler asks better questions, goes a little bit deeper, isn't trying to grandstand at all. And that's why it's even actually weird being a guest, because I talk so much more than when I was a host. It's very challenging sometimes. But I think if you set yourselves up with mini experiments, find an ally, a colleague, even as a family member, if it feels really uncomfortable, but start with ones and twos and 3 out of 10s. And only you know what that means. If it makes you too uncomfortable, it's probably higher. It's probably above a 5. I'm not saying those are off the table, but build the muscle, build the idea. Because all of a sudden, the more often you're curious, the more often it actually feels safer. So at the first time I'm like, I have a question and I've never spoke up in a meeting, that's probably going to feel like an 8 out of 10 from a stress perspective. But if it's like, well, you're my coworker and we get along, and actually I want you to challenge me because I want to get comfortable with it, but I want to challenge you back. But let's agree that that's the dynamic. That's the game we're going to play. That becomes a 2 out of 10. And all of a sudden you just start getting better at asking questions. And then what was an 8 becomes a 4. And I do think that there's a conditioning that comes in that takes a little bit of practice, but start small and kind of stack your wins, if you will.
Okay, that's great. That's really great and specific advice. And also what I picked up is, I also like the language of experiments, but what I realized now, actually, it really nicely fits with curiosity, because when I think about that, I think like chemistry class at school, or like
Mm.
scientists. Scientists, first of all, they're curious and they do experiments. And I tell that my 8-year-old, that's actually it's a belief from Tony Robbins that I adopted many years ago. There's no bad results. No, there's no failure. There are only results. And the results, they're just results, right? So that's what I told my kid. If we literally do some little chemistry experiment or whatever it is, and things go wrong, I mean, like, okay, that was a result. That result sucked, so we don't do it again. But
And I learned, but you
yeah,
learned. That's the beauty of science. And the whole time you're trying to prove yourself wrong. And if you can't, only then does the thesis get to move forward. But if you can break it, you're like, oh, I guess this plus this doesn't always equal that. So therefore it's not true. Okay. But I think you're right. I love it. If the second you start getting attached to that chemical reaction, that's an error because now you become the result. And that's, I think, where things can get troublesome or limiting.
cool. So we'll be soon moving into the quickfire burst question. Before we do
Oh,
that, do you feel like there's anything else linked to what you do, curiosity, that you're burning to say and you didn't get a chance here to bring it out?
Yes, there is. This is something I learned long ago when I was training. I did my NLP training, neuro linguistic programming, which funny you mentioned Tony Robbins. A lot of his original work was based on NLP theory. And the most powerful line that I've been unpacking in my mind for the last 20 years has been the meaning of your communication is the result that it gets. The level of personal accountability, the level of ownership, the level of self curiosity required when you're like, I thought I was so clear when I talked to you. But Maggie, you messaged me after and go, oh, Tyler, when you said that thing, I heard this. And you're like, oh, how could you have heard that? That's not what I meant. It's on me, not on you. To blame outwardly, because what it really does is it takes on a level of personal responsibility that I think when it feels uncomfortable, it's probably when you should take it on the most. The meaning of my communication is the result that it gets. And when I'm not getting the results that I want, the first step is to get really, really curious about how I showed up. Then I get really curious about the individual and my relationship with them and how that might be affecting it. And ultimately, I was probably trying to activate some level of strategic curiosity, but I missed it because I didn't have the last two kind of aligned properly. And I've spent my whole life, I would say, finding my way back to that when something doesn't work out and I catch myself blaming and I'm like, wait a second here. Maybe I should take that on. And my journey around curiosity has helped significantly for that. So that's something I would leave with the listeners as a mantra. The meaning of your communication is the result that it gets. It changes the whole power dynamic very quickly and sometimes forces you to face maybe some uncomfortable truths about how you might be showing up. But the beauty of it is you also have the power to change.
That's really deep. And it's like you say, when you point at somebody, like four fingers are actually pointing at you, right? It's kind of the same idea.
Completely.
And there's one thing you might like. It's a training I recently did at work. It's called Process Communication Model, PCM. And it was
Okay.
originally developed for NASA astronauts to
Cool.
see how they communicate, but particularly how they react under pressure. And what it does, and it has a similar philosophy, is that good communication is not to talk to somebody, don't treat somebody like you want to be treated. Treat somebody like they want to be treated,
Yes.
which is kind of the same idea, right? So there you look at 6 different models of like communication styles, and you learn to pick them up. And I'm pretty sure we're probably both yellow, which are like the bubbly, like fast thinking, fast talking one. But there are different ones, like people that are more imaginative. They like to speak slow and have tons of ideas, but they just process information differently. And over time, again, you get better in picking up what the other person might be, more or less, so you can adapt your communication.
Because the ultimate outcome in that situation, especially for astronauts, is the thing that they're working on. The spacewalk, the launching the satellite, and life and death is very real. So if my goal is to be certain that you understood me, it behooves me to understand you and how you absorb information. I think that that's a beautiful scientific way to break down exactly what I said. Because treat others like I want to be treated, that's fine, but I have a very specific way of navigating the world. And my wife, for example, is very different. My wife likes to process information. My wife likes time to think about it. Early in our relationship, we would have a misalignment. And then the next day she would reach out and go, you know what? I thought about it and I would like to come back to you. I was dying because I just wanted to talk about it all right now. And I think some of the closest relationships in your life where you've got that safety is also where it can get the most messy, but it's a very good place to observe. Now, I would say after 20 years of being married, the misalignment and the actually, you know what? I'm sorry, I reacted here. This is why it happens now in minutes. But in the early days, it took like 12 hours. But
It's
I
so
wasn't going to speed
funny.
her process up. So I had to slow my process down.
It's so funny you bring that up. So when I did that test, I also gave like the different styles to my partner. Is like what resonates most. Turns out he's super opinionated, and I mean I've known that, but it wasn't so obvious to me.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, that's just how you tick. You just have strong opinions and you share them, but you share them from a good place. And
Yeah.
it really helped me because I started taking it less personal because I'm like, I don't want to have your opinion. I just wanted to speak, or I just, so it helped to detach and just like, okay, that's just your way of talking. Sometimes it's exactly what I need. And when it's not, I just let it go,
When it's not, it's not. I do love what you said because the more you know, knowledge is power. Cheesy to say, it's been on a bumper sticker, but the more you understand and respect, it's like, oh, and also you don't have to take things personally. I think that's one of the four agreements, is it not? Do not take things personally.
Exactly. Wonderful. This was really inspiring already. So now you get the challenge. I have 7 questions,
Ooh,
and the
okay, I'm
way it
ready.
goes is I fire them at you and I challenge you to answer with one word, or, maybe 2 words, but like
Okay,
one idea. It's
okay.
really hard, but I'm sure you'll get there.
Way to set me up. I feel like you're getting me on the edge of my seat here on purpose. I love
But yeah, like one idea, because I did it myself. I know how hard it is. So,
it.
one belief you had to drop to live your way.
to be to be valuable, it has to be hard.
Mm. A place that cracked something open in you.
Travel.
One thing you had to unlearn.
Oh, hard equals value. Difficult equals valuable. That's been my biggest thing
That
in the
seems
last
to
five
be a
years.
recurring theme.
Yeah, I'm like, I hate to reuse the answer, but I had to let go of that to make space for life to become easier. And that was easier said than done.
Yeah, no, but it's true. It's such a big one. We really think it's like, let's work smarter, not harder. We feel like we have to be sweating it out for
Oh,
it to be
I
valuable.
I
So
believe that at my core. I believe that much less now. And guess what? Life has gotten better. Funny.
see, yeah. You're non-negotiable right now.
Integrity in the concept of doing what you say, follow through.
Okay, that's nice. The boldest risk that you took and that paid off.
Putting myself out there, social
Mm.
media, podcasting, author, writing. It has all paid off, but it felt very risky in the early days. It still does sometimes.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. One word for your leadership or your life in this chapter.
Adaptable.
Hmm? And what is the ripple you hope your story creates?
Hope.
Hmm. Thank you. You've done amazingly. Most people actually don't stick to the briefing, but if you manage, it's really, I love it because it's so hard to bottom line, but it's interesting what comes out. So well
Yes.
done. Thanks so much for
Thank,
playing
thank you.
along.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
So as we wrap this up, is there anything, for listeners that are now curious about your work, that are fired up, that want to start doing something, that maybe want to learn more about you? Where could they get started? What could they do? Any last tips or resources you'd like to share?
Amazing. Thank you. Yes. Visit www.tylerchisholm.com. My team and I will very much emphasize my team have put together a fabulous website. As a business owner, you're always struggling to have your website just at that level you want it to be at because it could always be a little bit better because you're always outgrowing it. This website, actually, I have not outgrown yet. It has rich content. It's got articles, it's got podcasts, it has a link to buy the book. Please sign up and follow our newsletter. We put up something every week from a leadership management, professional, but always around curiosity. A lot of transparency, a lot of vulnerability in terms of talking with real people. We showcase other leaders that are often on the way up and trying to figure out their version of leadership. So if you're listening to this and you're early to leadership, you've probably had good role models and you've probably had less than great role models, but more importantly, you're looking for your version of leadership, and you're looking for your own mindful rebellion. I believe this website would be a great resource for you, and please follow us and reach out. I love to talk about curiosity, so I'm also happy to have a conversation if somebody wants to have a chat. I've recently started doing some coaching. So that's really exciting for me because I was a personal trainer very early in my career and loved it. But then I kind of grew out of it, that God I found into corporate and left that behind. And I find my life is coming full circle now with my ability to share my experiences and walk alongside someone using this curiosity lens as their leadership evolves, either early or even later in their career. It's never too late to teach a new leader teach an old leader new tricks, maybe. So that's an area of excitement for me. But by all means, tylerchisholm.com, you will find everything you need and probably some really good resources for you on there.
Amazing. And the coaching, it's leadership coaching. It's not like
it is very much
personal training, back to personal training.
No, it's, yeah, sorry. I mentioned that simply because that was a part of my life where I helped people to access a new part of their life, but I use fitness. And then in the last 25 years, I've learned a whole other set of skills, but I still want to really base it on the 4-burner stove. There's the work burner that everyone has on high, and you're using all the gas for your work burner. What about your vitality? What about your family? What about your friends and community? So my coaching is absolutely under the realm of leadership, and it's about individuals that are willing to look at and understand how to regulate those 4 burners. Because if you leave the work burner on high all the time, it eventually burns that burner out, and then the other burners run out of gas, and it's hard to get them back, especially as time passes. Vitality is harder to reclaim the longer you've neglected it. And let's not talk about family, and let's not even talk about friends. I think all of it comes together to make us better leaders. And that's definitely the approach I've learned through the course of my life and happy to share with people.
That sounds amazing. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure. And yes, for all the listeners, find Tyler online, reach out, and share this if you found this useful. Bye for now.
That's it for today. If this stirred something in you, don't just sit on it. Do something, anything, today, right now. Take one small intentional step toward more freedom, flow, and fun. And see where the ride takes you. If this hit home, follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. That's how we ripple this energy further. Want to go deeper? Head over to mindset/mastery.ch for coaching, tools, and next steps. Until next time, trust your gut, stay curious, and keep playing it by your rules. Bye for now.